Hey gang, new project this week. We're going to work with buttons a little bit, kind of do some things that we haven't really touched on quite yet. I've got a simple project in mind that will involve two buttons on a page that will hide and show two images overlaid on top of one another. So sort of a simple before and after slide viewer, right? So not too complicated, but again, kind of some new things, a little outside of what we've done so far with jQuery. I've gone ahead and set up a new project here. On my screen, it's just under buttons. It's a new index page, so this is straight what you get when you create a new HTML project. I've got a blank script page and a blank style sheet so far. So first things first, we're going to put in our calls at the top of the sheet, right? So before we do anything else, we're going to set up a script source equals, and we're going to call jQuery. I'm actually just going to cut and paste this out of a document that I have handy here. This is the same one that we've been using, so you can do the same and just cut and paste it out of another project. Next, I'm going to call the style sheet that we have here. Ours is called style CSS, so on the page here, we're going to do the same thing. Style sheet source equals, type equals text CSS and source, or ref, href actually. Again, I always just cut and paste this stuff. I've never memorized these really simple tags that you use over and over again because I'm lazy. You can be lazy too if you want. Just be like me and just let's just cut and paste this out of our previous document because it's pretty much the same every time, right? So every time we want to include jQuery, every time we want to include our style sheet, and every time we want to include our JavaScript. So I'm going to save here, and again, we're going to be working in separate sheets on this. That's something we've sort of jumped back and forth on, I think, in class between putting our styles at the top of our HTML or including them in an outside sheet. I almost always include my styles and my script in separate documents outside the sheet that I just call. It just kind of helps keep things cleanly organized in my mind. Okay, so now we've got those things on the page, and the first thing I'm going to do is set up a couple of divs. So let's look at our page right now. Again, this is just the page that you pull out of Aptana. It's the default web page. And we're going to set up a couple of things here. Again, we're going to show and hide some images on the page, right? Images, by the way, which I've got pre-saved in my folder, and I'm going to put these up on Lore when I post the videos. But for now, just know that they're there, and that's what I'm working from. So within our body here, I'm going to set up a couple of divs. First div I'm going to say is going to be our content holder, right? Content holder. And we're going to put some things inside of this, some content, as you might imagine. Div class equals, let's call this content item. We're going to put two of these in here. So there's our first content item and second content item. They both get the same class because there's two of them, but they're going to have some of the same properties here. I'm also going to give them an ID. So in this case, what we're going to be showing is two pictures of Mount Kilimanjaro, one from 1993 and one from 2000. So this is a convention you see a lot, this before and after idea. You see it a lot with weather stories where you would show a satellite image of coastal erosion after a hurricane or something like that. In this case, I just found a couple of good high-res images of Mount Kilimanjaro on Wikipedia. Let me see if I can actually pull those up here. Well, no, let's not worry about it. Yeah, actually, let's look at them. Do I have maybe I've got them right here. There we go. So these are the images we're going to work with. There's the after, and here's our before, right? So as you can see, lots of snow around 1993, not so much snow by 2000, right? So that's interesting, right? And it's pretty much the same picture taken from the same angle. So we're going to just lay one on top of the other, and you're going to see the difference kind of fade in and out. But back to our page and back to our markup here. So as you might imagine, we're going to put images in these two holders here. So let's say for the first one, we're going to call it 1993 simply. And the ID on the second one, we're going to just say is 2000. And inside of each one of those now, again, remember divs are pretty much just boxes inside of boxes whenever we're kind of setting up our markup like this. So in this case, this one's going to be, actually these are going to be image tags because we're calling our images here. So image source equals images slash, that's my dog Matilda. Hello, Matilda, say hi to everybody. Oh my god, what is going on? What's going on outside? Who knows? 1993 JPEG, and images can be self-closing tags, kind of how I like to do it. Do we want a class on this? We probably do. Let's just go ahead and throw a class on here. I'm not sure if we'll use it or not, but we'll just say our class is image, right? So, or more to the point, let's say main image. So this will be two main images because they're both going to be right on, top of one another. So, and since they're going to be the same, I'll just cut and paste this one and change just one thing on it, which is to say 2000 instead of 1993. And next up, let's see, so that's our content holder. Let's take a look at our page real quick and just see what it looks like. Again, we haven't put any styles on this yet, so there's our two images, one on top of the other. Let's keep moving. And things we definitely know we're going to need on the page. So before we even do any of the styles, I'm just going to kind of lay everything out so we know what we're working with here. Div ID here, let's call this button holder. This is where our buttons are going to go. The boxes that are our buttons need another box to go in. Remember, boxes inside of boxes. If class equals button. And let's see. Well, for now, let's just do two classes, two buttons. And inside of these, put some text. One of them will be 1993. The other one will be 2000. And anything else on that? Probably not quite yet. Let's see what we got here. So picture, picture, and they're all the way down at the bottom, 1993 and 2000. So far, because we haven't applied any styles, everything's just going to stack right on top of each other, right? So next, we want to jump into our styles. So before we even jump into any script, we're just going to take care of some basic layout stuff here. And let's see. So remember our box with our photos in them is called content holder. So I'm going to create a style for our content holder. And I happen to know, because I downloaded the images and sized them in Photoshop, that the images we'll be working with are 550 pixels wide and 350 pixels high. And let's see, what else? What else do we need to know about these photos? We'll just do that for now. That's the content holder, and then the photos are going to take up the full space. So with that, then we'll also do content item. Is that what we called? Content item. Yep. So those photo holders are also going to be 550 pixels high or 550 pixels wide rather by 350 pixels high. So those are our images in there, and again, let's just jump back over, and so far probably haven't changed anything because we're just assigning the heights that they already had anyway. We're not downscaling them or anything, but it will matter here in a moment. Content holder, let's see, content item. So because we want these images to appear one on top of the other, we're going to, remember we talked about positions last week, we're going to apply position absolute. And what this does, divs want to naturally arrange themselves on top of one another, right? So div, div. But we actually want our divs to appear literally in the same space, so one kind of layered on top of the other. In order to do that, we're going to give them an absolute style. They're both going to have the same absolute position, which is going to be basically 0x and 0y, right? So top 0 pixels and left 0 pixels. And so if we just dump that little bit of code in there and jump over to our page and refresh, we'll see, okay, so now we've just got one image, seemingly, but we know that there's actually, if we look at our element here, we can see that there are indeed two images in the same space, right? So, moving right along. Wait, do we have an issue with this? We do have an issue with this because remember there was a title in there, right? So what's going on? Well, we applied an absolute position, and that's the only position we have applied in our CSS. So everything is going to go to the relative position of the next div that has a position assigned to it. And so since no other divs have a position assigned, they're both going to go to the top left and the top right of the whole page. There's nothing to stop them. And so that's something we actually want to fix. And remember, our content items appear inside of another div called content holder. We're going to give content holder a position. We're not going to give it absolute position because we really don't want to mess with kind of moving it from its natural kind of place, right? The place that it wants to be. So instead we're going to use position relative. And with position relative, I don't actually have to assign a top or a left to this. And remember earlier that we had a title and then the images were naturally appearing below. And so we're actually going to go back to that. So let's reload the page here and see what happens. And there you go. So our title is going to stay where it was before. And that's a relative position, meaning that it falls to its natural position. If we wanted to put a tag in this to say, let's say left 50 pixels, it would be 50 pixels to the, it would move 50 pixels from the left of where it naturally wants to be. So again, if you come back here, I've got 50 pixels on that now, so it's 50 pixels from its natural point of rest. Yeah, so hope that makes sense. I'm going to leave that out, and for now, just know that the page has some kind of pleasing hierarchy to it so far. But what we don't have is buttons that look like buttons. Let's go ahead and style those up real quick. Oops, close that guy. So let's see. First things first, where do we want our button? Well, let's worry about the buttons first. So each button has a class of button. There you go. And for buttons, there's a little trick that I like to use. I like to use padding. Again, without going too far down the road of trying to explain what each and every tag means, padding is basically just assigning a pixel value that surrounds text within an object or content within a div, I should say. So our text will have whatever we want to give it. Let's say we give it let's give it 8 pixels of padding, and so that we can see our padding, we're going to put an outline or a border rather. Border 1 pixel solid. Let's go with this kind of pleasing light gray. And we're also going to put color on this so that we actually have a color that our text will appear in. And we'll go the same really light gray. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, wow, so we're getting there, but our buttons are filling up the whole screen, which we don't want. Why is that? It's again, this is they're gonna fall to their whatever natural state they want to be in, but we want to kind of rein that in a little bit. So we're gonna put a width of, let's say, 100 pixels on each of those. Let's see where we're at. And there you go. So those are kind of starting to look like buttons. They'd look a lot more like buttons if the text was in the center. So let's do that. And what else? What else? If they were right next to each other instead of stacked like that, that might be nice. So we could put a float on that. Float is a whole. This is a rabbit hole. If I tried to explain float, there's all sorts of rules and exceptions to float, but basically float is what you use when you want to line things up side by side by side. You can float left and everything goes from the left and lines up, or you can float right and everything goes to the right and lines up. Float left is kind of my go-to for just whenever I want things to appear in a line together. Yeah, just for now, again, I'm not going to try to explain it too much. Just know that that's the way it is. One more thing I'm going to do with this, which is put a little bit of a margin on these so that they're not just right on top of each other like that. Let's say margin of 8 pixels, and let's see what that looks like. So, Boom. Oh, right. Those look like buttons. Those look exactly like buttons. So we're going to go with it. Okay, so coming to the end, and I'll pick up with the next video here in a second.